When my sister Kiji tried to introduce me to her 99th best friend, I finally agreed to go. I thought she'd be relieved to finally shake me off, like peeling away a sticky piece of gum. But when I got home after the date, I found her sitting on the sofa, glaring at me with dark, icy eyes. You only just met. How could you already be planning a trip to the hot springs? She furrowed her brows, her tone dead serious. She continued, how can you be so reckless and impulsive? Before she could finish, I cut her off. It's not impulsive. I really like him. Thank you, sister, for introducing me to such an outstanding man. As for what happens next, we'll figure it out ourselves. I turned to head to my room, but something I said must have really set her off. She stood up immediately, her face darkening. I am your sister. You have to listen to me. I had no idea where this random flare of temper was coming from. In my past life, I looked into it. She spent her whole life using tears, tantrums, and threats of suicide to wear Lu Ningxuang down until she finally caved, eventually breaking off her engagement with her fiancé Lu Weidong and marrying me instead. But on the day of the wedding, Lu Weidong burst in wearing a black suit, pointed at my face and called me a gold digger, a man who steals women. I tried to defend myself, but they twisted my words and leaked them online. Public opinion turned vicious, branding me shameless, accusing me of seducing my sister, disregarding all morality and ruining the family reputation. The Lu family stock plummeted as a result, and Lu's father died from a stroke brought on by the stress. At the funeral, Lu's mother no longer looked at me with the love she once had. She looked at me like I was her worst enemy. The Lu and Lu families turned from longtime allies into bitter rivals, attacking each other at every turn in business. Lu Ningxuang was completely overwhelmed, spending more and more time across the table, from Lu Weidong in heated negotiations, and coming home later and later every night. I didn't dare to cause another scene. Lu Ningxuang hadn't come home for 3 days, and I left in this empty, echoing villa, was living like a criminal. Eventually, Lu Ningxuang asked for a divorce. Her voice was heavy with exhaustion and regret. If only I had insisted on marrying Wei Dong back then. Dad wouldn't have died, Mom wouldn't have ended up like that, and the Lu family wouldn't have fallen to this point. I had no response to that. I just stayed silent and signed the papers. As I walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, I was dazed and was struck by a truck that had run a red light. The last thing I saw before I died was Lu Ningxuang standing on the other side of the road, answering a call from Lu Weidong. She didn't even spare me a glance. My stubbornness had ruined the lives of so many people. So after being reborn, I had only 2 goals. First, to stay away from Lu Ningxuang and cut all ties. Second, to atone for my sins and repay the Lu family's kindness. So during the New Year's Eve dinner, when she announced her engagement to Lu Weidong, the whole family stared at me tense and anxious, terrified that I might flip the table right there. But me, I simply presented a pair of natural blue diamonds worth $200 million. They were one of a kind in the whole world. My adoptive mother was stunned for a moment. Then she blurted out, "But didn't you empty your entire savings account to buy these? Weren't you planning to have them made into wedding rings?" To propose to Ningxuang, my adoptive mother hesitated, leaving her words hanging. In my heart, I silently finished her sentence for her. On the surface, I kept my smile gracious and poised. I said sincerely, "They were always meant for my sister. It's the perfect wedding gift for my sister and future brother-in-law." As soon as those words left my lips, Lu Ningxuang frowned slightly, scanning my face for a moment. She then replied, "Since it's your intent, Weidong, and I will accept them." After dinner, she called me into the study alone. The scent of her signature osmanthus perfume and wine wafted over. Her natural high-status air of authority rushed toward me. It was suffocating. "Yanchuan, you've graduated now. Take charge of the temporary branch office in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from now." That was also the day she was officially getting engaged to Lu Weidong, sending me away to run a branch office. In reality, it was just a way to get me out of the picture, to keep me from ruining their engagement. I looked at that face I'd been hopelessly obsessed with for over 10 years. With its perfect sharp features, and those clear, beautiful eyes, I could trace every line of her face with my eyes closed. I lowered my gaze and whispered, "Okay, if this were the old me, I would have made a scene. I would have been red-eyed, demanding to know what right she had to push me away. I might have even lost all control and charged at her, hugging her and pleading, 'Sister, please don't leave me.' But instead I was so docile and obedient, acting as if I had never, ever harbored feelings for her beyond a sibling's love." Lu Ningxuang suddenly felt a wave of unease. She couldn't put her finger on why. She probably just assumed I was acting sweet to plot something behind her back. "I've always thought of you as my own brother. In the past, you could throw your tantrums if you wanted to. Your sister would always indulge you. But from now on, if you stir up any more trouble, I won't go easy on you. The branch office is nearby. You can come back whenever you like. The film company is full of young directors and actors. You can take your pick of any talented, beautiful woman you want. Stop keeping your eyes glued to your sister." I secretly clenched my fists. I put on a bright smile and said, "You're right, sister. I'll be sure to choose carefully. I won't let your good intentions go to waste." Lu Ningxuang frowned. She felt like something was off. But then her phone rang. It was Lu Weidong pestering her to go watch the fireworks with him. Lu Ningxuang grabbed her coat, ready to head out. But just before leaving, she hesitated and looked back at me. Yanchuan, do you want to come with us? I froze for a second, remembering how I once forced Lu Ningxuang to promise me that she would spend time with me to watch fireworks every single year. I shook my head, my hands trembling slightly. I kept my voice light and upbeat, urging my sister to go quickly. Have a great time with your fiancé. Lu Ningxuang stared at me for a couple of seconds. In the end, she didn't say a word. Once the door closed, I could no longer keep that smile plastered on my face. I forced myself to pull it together and went to find Mother Lu. When Mother Lu saw me, a flicker of pity flashed in her eyes. If it hurts, just cry, dear. Ningxuang has spoiled you since you were little. It's only natural that you fell for her. But Ningxuang has always been groomed to be the successor. She feels the weight of that responsibility so heavily. She's afraid that marrying you would only make you a target for ridicule and gossip. If you really can't let her go, I can help you try to talk to her. I offered a bitter smile and shook my head. Suddenly, I knelt down and performed a formal kowtow before Mother Lu. Mother Lu was startled. She rushed to help me up, crying, "Child, what are you doing?" With a solemn expression, I spoke. I will never forget that the Lu family has raised me for 20 years. I dare not ask for anything more. I've heard that our family has been trying to partner with the prestigious Li family overseas, but you haven't been able to find an opening. I am willing to enter a marriage alliance with their youngest daughter. Mother Lu was horrified. She gripped my wrists tightly. You want to marry Li Anan? Do you even know what kind of person Li Anan is? Rumor has it she inherited her biological mother's mental illness. They say she's a violent, unstable lunatic. She's been locked away in a sanatorium since she was a child. She's even cursed two of her own older sisters to their deaths. Aren't you just throwing yourself into a pit of fire? I remained calm, trying to soothe Mother Lu. Mom, those are just rumors. Besides, in the eyes of others, aren't I a lunatic too? A freak who ignored morality and ethics to fall in love with my own sister. Someone bossy and headstrong who tried to drive away every man around her, making the entire Lu household a living hell. The Li family is one of the top, most established families in the Chinese community, though they're usually incredibly low-key. The only way to get in good with them is through a strategic marriage. You and Dad have always spoiled me so much, so I want to contribute something to the family too. I've weighed the pros and cons of this marriage. As I spoke, my eyes grew more and more determined. Mom's eyes welled up and she stared at me for a long time. Finally, she reached out and stroked my hair. All right then. Since your heart is set on this, the Li family will send people to come and get you. The wedding will be in Hong Kong in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Hearing that timeline, I sighed to myself thinking, what a coincidence. This life's wedding, it's actually on the exact same day as Lu Ningxuang's engagement. I just hope that this time, Ningxuang won't have any reason to regret anything because of me. My parents suddenly thought of something and started grumbling that the date the Li family set was way too rushed. Mom hasn't even had time to prepare anything for you. How about this? I'll have Ningxuang transfer a portion of her company's shares to you first. I hurriedly interrupted her. Mom, no, please don't. I don't need anything. But regarding this marriage, I'm begging you to help me keep it a secret from my sister for now. I don't want her to feel like I'm forcing her to make a choice or trying to stop her engagement with Lu Weidong. My parents couldn't win against me, so they sighed and pulled me into their arms. They patted my back just like they did when I was a little kid and agreed to all my requests. Mom and I talked for a long time, and by the time I got back to my room, it was almost dawn. Yet I wasn't the least bit sleepy. I leaned against the door and looked around my room. A whole wall covered in a photo collage, filled with pictures of Lu Ningxuang and me together. In my closet, it's all the high-end couture that Lu Ningxuang bought me when she flew out to fashion weeks with me. On the bookshelves sit all the birthday gifts Lu Ningxuang has given me year after year. Every corner is overflowing with traces of me and Lu Ningxuang, just like the last 20 years of my life. I was originally nothing more than a castaway and unwanted infant. It was Lu Yingxuang who wanted a little brother, and she took me from the orphanage when I was 3, bringing me into the Lu family. At first, I would just huddle in the corner, too terrified to move. But then Lu Yingxuang handed me a piece of candy. She took my hand, her smile warm and gentle as she said, "Don't be afraid. From now on, I'm your big sister. I'll protect you forever." And she kept her word. She was the one who showed up at every parent-teacher meeting. She was the one who shielded me whenever drunken thugs caused trouble. And when I had a high fever, she stayed by my side, watching over me all night, fulfilling every duty a sister possibly could. But I was just too greedy. I wasn't satisfied with just being her little brother anymore. I started wishing delusionally that I could keep all of Lu Yingxuang's kindness for myself. I shook my head, despising myself for such thoughts. I took one last lingering look at every corner of this room. Then piece by piece I began packing everything away. All these things that only fueled my selfish cravings, and tucked them deep inside my suitcase. Packing and organizing took another 2 hours. By the time I was finished, the exhaustion finally washed over me. I collapsed onto the bed, drifting in and out of consciousness. The very last thing I did before falling asleep was grab my phone and book an expedited appointment for my travel permit to Hong Kong and Macau. But I hadn't been asleep long. When I felt through a haze that someone was standing by my bedside, I struggled to pry my eyes open, and my pupils dilated in shock. Lu Yingshuang was standing there, her face dark and stormy, scrolling through something on my phone. Noticing I had woken up, she looked down at me, her voice chillingly cold. Lu Yanchuan, what exactly were you doing last night? My brain let out a sharp buzz, and any lingering sleepiness vanished instantly. What had she seen? Could it be that she already knows I'm planning to head to Hong Kong for that arranged marriage? Before my sluggish brain could even come up with an excuse, Lu Yingshuang tossed my phone back at me. Her eyes were burning with suppressed rage. I knew you wouldn't just let this go so easily, but I never imagined that you'd sink so low as to spread rumors and smear Weidong online. I was completely blindsided by her sudden, sharp scolding. I picked up my phone. On the screen was a viral post from a gossip account. It was listing every single one of Lu Weidong's scandals. Everything from bullying classmates until they were forced to drop out, to using his family connections to steal first place in a photography competition. It even mentioned him stealing someone else's girlfriend. And how he's always hitting up nightclubs and chasing after models. The comments had already topped 10,000. And every single one of them was tearing Lu Weidong apart. The top comment read, with his kind of character. Does he even deserve someone like the eldest daughter of the Lu family? If he had any self-awareness, he'd call off the engagement already. I took a deep breath. I looked up, meeting her eyes steadily. It wasn't me. Lu Ningshuang looked down at me, her expression cold. If it wasn't you, then who? Yan Chuan, you've never gotten along with Wei Dong since you were kids. You've always felt the need to compete with him over everything. If I remember correctly, that photography competition mentioned in the post, the original first-place winner was supposed to be you. I pressed my lips together. It was true back then I wanted to expose him for bribing the judges, but my sister promised me that she would go to Iceland with me for a photography trip. I had long since stopped caring about petty squabbles with him. Lu Ningshuang sneered. Exactly. You're obsessed with me. You'd compromise on anything just to please me, and you'd use any underhanded method to target my fiancé. A wave of exhaustion washed over me. I said in a low voice, but I really don't like you anymore. Before I could finish my sentence, the door was slammed open. Lu Weidong charged in, his whole body shaking. Lu Yanchuan, are you happy now? My phone is completely blown up, with abusive calls and harassment. You just don't want your sister to be with me, right? Fine, I won't get engaged then. Can you just stop messing with me for God's sake? Lu Ningshuang hurriedly rushed over to pull him into an embrace. I looked up and tried to talk her down with a couple of gentle words. But when she looked back at me, her eyes were ice cold. Lu Yanchuan, if you still want me to acknowledge you as my brother, go and post a retraction right now. Admit that you're the one who started those rumors to smear Qiqiao. My face went pale in an instant. If I did that, I'd be the one getting cyberbullied instead. I thought about the nightmare of being relentlessly harassed by people online in my past life. That whole horrific experience. I gritted my teeth. I didn't do it, and I won't confess to something I didn't do. Before Lu Ningshuang could react, I climbed out of bed barefoot. I dragged out the large box I'd packed up last night and opened it back up. Right on top was the very first photo I ever took with Lu Ningshuang after I came to the Lu family. My voice was calm and detached, every word sharp and clear. If I prove that I don't love my sister anymore, does that clear my name? As soon as the words left my lips, I grabbed that photo and tore it into pieces. Lu Ningshuang's expression shifted. I didn't look at her. I just picked up the next item. It was a high-end designer suit, the gift she'd given me for my 18th birthday. The scissors came down, and the sound of the fabric ripping was jarringly loud. One by one photos, gifts and keepsakes, each one etched with the obsessive, fervent love I used to hold. Things I once treasured like my own life, but now I destroyed them all without batting an eye. Lu Ningshuang's brows drew tighter and tighter together. A wave of inexplicable irritation surged within her. She stepped forward and gripped my wrist. Yanchuan, that's enough. I looked up at her, my eyes completely empty and still. Seeing that look in my eyes, she hesitated for a second, then forced a smile. Yanchuan, what is the point of all this? You're making it look like I'm the one pushing you into a corner. He tugged on Lu Ningshuang's sleeve again. His voice was incredibly gentle. Forget it, Ningshuang. Don't push him, even if it really was him. As his brother-in-law, is there anything I can't forgive? We'll get along just fine in the future. I couldn't be bothered to listen to his fake manipulative acting. Anything else, sister brother-in-law? Do you have anything else to say? If not, I'd like to get some more rest. Lu Ningshuang looked at me, wanting to say something but holding back. Lu Weidong pulled on her sleeve. Ningshuang, let's go first. Let Yanchuan get some good rest. Lu Ningshuang nodded. She turned and walked toward the door. I saw them out to the door. Just as I was about to close it, a woman clutching a fruit knife suddenly charged straight at us. Lu Weidong, you scumbag. You made my brother drop out and commit suicide. Today I'm going to make you pay with your life. Lu Ningshuang reacted incredibly fast. She grabbed Lu Weidong by the waist and shielded him, dodging to the side. But I was standing behind him and couldn't get out of the way in time. Worse, the momentum from him turning to shield her dragged me right into the path of the blade. The knife sank into my chest and then pierced right through my back. Great surges of blood gushed out. I slumped down against the door frame. In my blurred, blood-red vision, I saw the shock and a flicker of annoyance on Lu Ningxuang's face. Lu Weidong was huddled next to her, screaming in terror. The attacker was tackled to the ground by the bodyguards who had rushed over. His lips moved, as if he were calling my name. But I couldn't hear him anymore. Darkness swallowed me whole. When I opened my eyes, I was met with blinding, white fluorescent lights and the smell of disinfectant. Mom's voice was filled with tears. "Yanchuan, you scared your mother to death." I weakly twitched my fingers about to speak. When I heard Mom turn her head and start scolding Ningxuang by the bedside, "It's not that Mom is trying to lecture you. You weren't wrong to protect Weidong back then. But you really need to look at who's behind you." Yanchuan was standing right there at your back. "That turn of yours sent him straight into the line of fire. And another thing, before you insisted that Yanchuan was the one spreading rumors to smear Weidong, you stormed over there first thing in the morning to demand an explanation. Let me tell you something. On New Year's Eve, Yanchuan was with me the whole time just chatting. He didn't head back to his room until the sun was almost up. Where would he even find the time to pull a stunt like that?" Mom grew more furious as she spoke, saying he didn't even want a mother anymore because of this family. Seeing that Mom was about to spill the secret about the arranged marriage, I used every ounce of strength I had to cry out. I cut off the words that were just about to slip from her lips. Mom hurried over. "Yanchuan, you're awake. Does anything hurt?" "I'm going to go call the doctor." I forced a smile. "I'm okay, Mom. Please don't worry about me." After a flurry of activity, the doctor finished the checkup and said there was no major harm done. I had just lost a lot of blood and needed some quiet rest. Mom finally let out a sigh of relief. She gave a few more instructions before I finally convinced her to go out and grab something to eat. The hospital room went quiet. I looked toward Lu Ningxuang, who was still standing at the foot of the bed. My tone was indifferent. "Why are you still here? Aren't you going to go keep Brother Weidong company?" He must have been frightened too. Lu Ningxuang frowned slightly. In the past, whenever I suffered even the smallest injury, I would act out, cling to her, and beg for her to help me with the medicine. But now I just spoke with such cold detachment. It was like I was shooing a guest away. He took 2 steps closer. His voice was low. "Regardless of everything, you're still my younger brother. Yanchuan, you still have the right to come to your sister when you're in pain." I lowered my eyes. "No thanks. I'm afraid your husband might misunderstand." Lu Ningxuang wanted to say something more, but my cold, distant attitude pricked at him, leaving him feeling deeply irritated inside. He pressed his lips into a thin line and turned to leave. The door clicked shut. In that split second, a wave of inexplicable panic surged from the depths of my heart, but I forced it back down deep inside. Over the few days I spent in the hospital, I had become so quiet I felt like a completely different person. I finally got my hands on my expedited travel permit for Hong Kong and Macau. I looked down at my own photo on the permit and let out a soft, long sigh of relief. On the day I was discharged, Lu Ningxuang came to pick me up. But the car didn't head in the direction of the Lu family estate. "Weidong wants to take you out to dinner. He wants to apologize for all the misunderstandings from before." Lu Ningxuang kept her eyes fixed on the road ahead. "He really wants to get along with you from now on." I stayed silent for 2 seconds, then just nodded. "All right." When we arrived at the restaurant, Lu Weidong was already there waiting. Yes, Lu Weidong was already there. And sitting right beside him was a young woman. She was wearing a long dress and had striking, radiant features. Lu Weidong greeted me with artificial enthusiasm. "Yanchuan, you're here? Sit down, don't stand on ceremony. This is Lu Xinyue, the second young lady of the Lushi group. She's always had a good impression of you." He smiled and introduced her. "Xinyue also studied film and television. You two have plenty to talk about. I figured if you two spent more time together, who knows, it might just work out between you two." Lu Ningxuang nodded in agreement. "Weidong is right. It's good for you to make more friends anyway." I looked at Lu Xinyue and my heart sank like a stone. This woman had chased after me before, and I had rejected her. Rumors in our circle labeled her a total player, someone who swapped boyfriends faster than she changed her clothes. I gave a polite, cold refusal. "Thanks for the offer, Brother Weidong, but I'm not really looking for any of that right now." Lu Weidong's smile stiffened for a moment, but he quickly recovered, continuing in a gentle, patronizing tone. "Yanchuan, you can't just keep relying on your sister forever." Lu Ningxuang chimed in. "It's not like we're forcing you to date her. Even if it's just for future film project collaborations, you two should at least talk. Since things have come to this, it would be rude for me to keep refusing. I just wanted to get through things peacefully before the joint venture." Lu Xinyu spoke up. "Mr. Lu, I have a private club nearby. The atmosphere is lovely. Why don't we go there to talk things over?" I glanced over at Lu Ningxuang. His eyes gave me a look of encouragement. I had no choice but to nod. The lighting in the club was dim and suggestive. Lu Xinyu ordered 2 drinks. He pushed one toward me. Mr. Lu, actually, I've always admired you, he prattled on. I listened half-heartedly. Suddenly, I started to feel dizzy and lightheaded. My body went limp. Something wasn't right. I shot up from my seat, but I could barely stand steady. Lu Xinyu dropped the act. The drug is kicking in, isn't it? Don't worry, I'll take good care of you. He pulled out a leather whip and cracked it through the air. I just love men who don't know their place. You'd better be screaming for me properly soon. As I was pinned to the sofa, the drug made my consciousness drift between clarity and a blur. The strength of the drug made my mind drift in and out of focus. Lu Xinyu flicked the whip, his face twisted with a sick kind of excitement. You know what? I hate men like you who act so high and mighty. You were pretty arrogant when you rejected me last time, weren't you? The whip struck the back of the sofa with a sharp crack. I bit down hard on my tongue, using the pain to force myself to stay awake. I quietly reached out toward the coffee table. My fingertips brushed against the cold glass of a vase. Today I'm going to show you. Before Lu Xinyue could finish his sentence, I mustered every ounce of my remaining strength to grab the vase and smashed it hard against his head. The porcelain shattered into pieces, and Lu Xinyue collapsed to the floor. I staggered as I scrambled to my feet and stumbled my way out of the club. The cold wind rushed into my collar, and with shaking hands I hailed a taxi. I practically crawled through the front door when I finally made it home. But what greeted me was the smug, gloating look on Lu Weidong's face, and a piece of surveillance footage. In the video, Lu Xingyue was lying in a pool of blood, and my panicked, fleeing silhouette was as clear as day. Lu Weidong sighed. Look at you, he said. If you didn't like the person I introduced to you, you could have just said so. Why did you have to resort to violence and hurt her? Lu Ningxuang was standing off to the side. Her expression was dark and grim. The Lu family had arrived as well. They were aggressive and furious. The Lu family owes us an explanation, they demanded. We've already called the police. With a charge like intentional assault, he'll be behind bars for a few years at least. I fought to keep myself upright and tried to explain. He drugged me. It was a setup. I was just acting in self-defense. Lu's mother let out a cold, sharp laugh. Drugged you? My daughter can have any man she wants. Why would she ever need to drug someone like you? It's clear you're just arrogant, overbearing, and completely reckless with other people's lives. Lu Weidong spoke in a soft, concerned tone. Listen to me, Yan Chuan, just admit you were wrong. I'll go to the Lu family and beg them for mercy on your behalf. Enough, Lu Ningxuang cut him off. The look she gave me was terrifyingly cold. A son of the Lu family cannot end up with a criminal record. It would ruin his reputation and his future far too much. She paused for a moment. Then she said, emphasizing every single word, I will handle the punishment myself. My pupils constricted in shock. Sister, you don't believe me. Lu Ningxuang didn't answer. I repeated, I said I'll handle the punishment myself. My heart dropped as my pupils narrowed. Sister, you really don't believe me. Lu Ningxuang remained silent. She simply ordered the servants to go and fetch the whip. That woman, she used to chase after me, I said, pointing straight at Lu Weidong. He knows about it. He did this on purpose. He set this whole thing up to push us together. I pointed directly at Lu Weidong. He knew. He was the one who intentionally set us up. They're clearly up to no good. Lu Weidong's eyes turned red as he stared at me. How can you frame me like this? I had nothing but good intentions when I tried to set you up with someone. Not only are you being hurtful, but you're also dragging my name through the mud. Lu Ningxuang interrupted him again. Enough! Exactly because I am your older sister, and because I protected you while you grew up, I let you get away with murder. It's even more important that I teach you a lesson. He took the whip and looked at me. He held out his hand and I stared at him. Looking at this face, the one I had loved for over a decade, I suddenly laughed. My smile was filled with sorrow. I slowly held out my hand. The first lash landed. My palm immediately swelled up with bloodied welts. My whole body shuddered. I gritted my teeth. The second lash, the third. Every single one felt like it was carving into my heart. It shattered all those years of young, foolish love, tearing every one of my pathetic fantasies to pieces. When the 10 lashes were over, my palm was a bloody mess. My face was deathly pale. Cold sweat had soaked through my clothes. Lock him in the storage room. Lu Ningxuang threw the whip down. Without my permission. Nobody is allowed to let him out. The storage room was cold and dark, filled with piles of dusty old junk. I curled up in the corner. My body was burning with agony. My previous knife wounds hadn't fully healed, and now the whip lashes were beginning to get infected. My waist, my stomach, my legs, my whole body felt like it was on fire. I used my last bit of strength to pound frantically on the door. Please, someone get me a doctor. At least get me some medicine. From outside the door, the maid's voice came sounding conflicted. Sir, please don't make this hard for us. The young lady said that from now on, Mr. Lu is the one in charge of this house. Mr. Lu gave the orders that this time you really need to suffer and learn your lesson. I slid down against the door, collapsing to the floor. Lu's parents were away visiting relatives for the holidays. There was no one home who could help me. She wanted me to suffer to really learn my lesson. I slumped down against the door, completely drained. Lu's parents were out of town visiting family for the new year. There was nobody around to lend me a hand. On the first day, all I had was a glass of water and half a cold, stale bun. The second day, it was just water again. The bun had gone bad, and by the third day, I was burning with fever, drifting in and out of consciousness. Yet I could still hear the maids gossiping nearby. The young mistress is so good to Mr. Lu. She personally oversaw every single detail of the engagement. I heard she even checked every single invitation herself. Of course, even the jewelry is a custom design. The banquet hall is filled with the roses Mr. Lu loves. She even hired a symphony orchestra. Has the Lu family ever thrown such a lavish wedding before? Never. The young mistress is truly putting her heart into this. I listened to them, my head spinning in a daze. It brought back memories of my own wedding to Lu Ningshuang in my past life. The perfunctory ceremony, everything was a mess, and the guests were whispering and mocking us. Not to mention Lu Ningshuang's cold, indifferent expression the entire time. So this is what it looks like when she truly loves someone. And everything I fought so hard to snatch away in my past life was nothing more than a pathetic joke. 3 days later, the door finally opened. The sunlight was so blinding I couldn't even keep my eyes open. An assistant was standing in the doorway. He delivered the message with a completely blank expression. The young mistress told me to take you to the temporary branch office. We're leaving now. I gripped the wall to pull myself up. Every inch of my body ached like my bones were falling apart. I rasped, my voice barely audible, and asked if I could at least take a quick shower first. When the assistant saw my wretched state, he paused, stunned, and didn't dare say another word. I took a quick rinse and changed into a clean set of clothes. Looking in the mirror, I saw how pale and haggard I looked. But my eyes, they were strangely calm. I grabbed only my essential documents and headed downstairs. The assistant couldn't help but ask, "Young Master Yan Chuan, aren't you going to pack your bags?" I answered calmly, "No need. I'll just buy whatever I need when I get there. And you don't need to see me off either. I've already called a car." Just before getting in, I turned back to look at his assistant. "Tell your master that I'll be a good boy and do as I'm told." Just as he wanted. From now on, I'll keep my distance from him and wish him a happy engagement. The car door shut. The car pulled away slowly. Once we left the villa complex, the driver finally spoke. "Mr. Lu sent me to pick you up and take you to Hong Kong. You'll be attending the wedding right after we land. Everything is already prepared." I leaned against the car window, watching the city scenery flash by. This place where I've lived for 20 years. This place that holds Lu Ningshuang. It's all slowly fading away. I gave a soft hum. From this day forward, our paths may never cross again. We shall not meet. The engagement party was held at a 7-star hotel owned by the Lu family. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above. A sea of roses carpeted the floor. Lu Weidong, dressed in a sharp white suit, held Ningshuang's hand, happily accepting the blessings of the guests. Lu Ningshuang turned to look at him, but for some reason he remembered something from many years ago. Back when I was just a little kid, I had happily told him, "When I grow up, I'm going to marry you, brother." Back then, he laughed and ruffled my hair. He said I was his childhood comfort. Yet deep down, he just thought his little brother was being adorable. In a daze, he seemed to see the end of the red carpet. It looked like me wearing a gorgeous suit walking toward him step by step. My eyes filled with anticipation and happiness. My lips parted slightly. As if about to call out his name, Lu Ningshuang. His heart tightened suddenly. "Ningshuang." Lu Weidong's voice pulled him back to reality. The end of the red carpet was completely empty. My heart gave a sharp, painful squeeze. Lu Weidong's voice pulled him back to reality. The red carpet was completely empty now. Only the ghosts are left carrying their champagne as they drift through the room. And as for Yan Chuan, he was nowhere to be seen. He rubbed the bridge of his nose, figuring he must just be exhausted from the past few days. Outside the window, the sudden roar of a jet engine tore through the sky. He looked up and watched a plane heading south. Its silver white wings caught the sunlight, reflecting a blinding glare. A long vapor trail stretched out behind it, slowly dissolving into the deep blue expanse. For no reason at all, a wave of unease washed over him. Lu Weidong tugged at his sleeve again. "It's time to go make our rounds." Lu Ningshuang pulled his gaze away, suppressing that strange feeling as he gave a slight nod. Lu Ningshuang pulled his gaze away, suppressing that strange feeling as he gave a slight nod. The entire day was a blur of drinks and empty talk. Old family friends of the Lu clan, relatives from the Lu family, business partners from every industry. One smiling face after another kept coming at him. Glass after glass of wine was forced down his throat. Lu Ningshuang could usually hold his liquor pretty well, but today he had drank way more than usual. Lu Weidong had stayed by his side the whole time, handling the small talk with practiced ease. Every now and then he'd glance over with a look of tender affection. It wasn't until late at night that the guests finally cleared out, and the ballroom fell back into silence. Lu Ningshuang sat on the sofa in the lounge and dialed his assistant's number. "Is everything set up over at Yan Chuan's place?" The assistant's voice came back quickly. "Miss, young Master Yan Chuan has already gone exactly as you requested." I watched him get into the car with my own eyes. Lu Ningshuang frowned. Why didn't you take him there yourself? Whatever, did he say anything? The assistant hesitated for a moment. He asked me to pass on a message to you, that he'll be a good boy and listen, just as you wanted. From now on, I'll keep my distance from you. And congratulations on your engagement. Lu Ningxuang's hand tightened slightly around her phone. The words "keep my distance" felt so wrong coming from my own mouth. It just didn't sound right at all. In the past, I would have practically clung to him 24 hours a day. Whenever he went on a business trip, I'd bombard him with video calls. And now I'm the one proactively saying I'll keep my distance. He frowned, tempted to call me back immediately to get to the bottom of it. Lu Weidong walked back in now, wearing a deep red suit. He sat down right beside him. Wensheng, are you calling Yan Chuan? Wasn't he supposed to head to Linxi today? Lu Ningxuang hesitated, raising an eyebrow slightly. He even said he's going to keep his distance from me from now on. I'm a little worried. Wait, I'm a little worried. Lu Weidong's smile didn't waver. His tone carried a hint of nonchalance. Don't worry about him. It's just because you punished him and he's feeling resentful. He's just acting out, saying things like keeping his distance. In a few days, once he's thought it through, he'll be back clinging to you again. He looked up at him. His gaze softened. In a few days, once he's thought it through, he'll be back clinging to you again. He looked up at him. His gaze was captivating. It's not like you don't know him. When has he ever been any different since he was a kid? Just give him a few days, he'll be fine. Lu Ningxuang thought about it for a moment. It really did seem that way. Every time I threw a tantrum, it was all bark and no bite. Within a few days, I'd always be the one crawling back, acting all cute, saying, "Sister, I was wrong." This time is probably the same. It's just a bigger fuss than usual, but at its core, it's nothing different. It's actually a good chance to give him the cold shoulder. I'll use this time to teach him a lesson. She put down her phone. Lu Weidong smirked and leaned in close to her ear. The night is short and precious. Let's not waste time thinking about those annoying things. His warm breath brushed against the side of her ear. Lu Ningxuang turned her head to look at him. That handsome face of his was full of tenderness. A month after the engagement, Lu Ningxuang had been keeping Lu Weidong company the whole time. The two of them went to Northern Europe. They went skiing in Norway, visited small towns in Sweden, and chased the northern lights in Iceland. Lu Weidong was in such high spirits. He had every single day packed to the brim. Several times Lu Ningxuang had thought about reaching out to me, but he would always find some excuse or coincidence to cut her off. In the end, she had no choice but to let it go. It wasn't until the night the aurora borealis exploded across the sky, the night air filled with ribbons of green and purple light, so breathtaking it felt unreal, that Lu Weidong stood there, head tilted back, marveling at the sight. But Lu Ningxuang found herself involuntarily thinking back to 3 years ago, to the trip to Iceland he had taken with me. Under those same northern lights, the way I looked at him was even more radiant and dazzling than the lights themselves. Back then, when Lu Weidong snatched away the top prize in that photography contest that should have been mine, I was understandably upset. He coaxed me, promising he'd take me back to Iceland to shoot photos again. I held out my pinky finger, and he laughed as he hooked it with his own. But that was a promise he never kept. That night, Lu Ningxuang made an excuse about being tired and headed back to the hotel early with Lu Weidong. For some time now, she had actually been having strange recurring dreams. Whenever she woke up, she couldn't remember the details, only the lingering sense of regret left behind. Back at the hotel, for some time now, she had actually been having strange recurring dreams. Whenever she woke up, she couldn't remember the details, only the lingering sense of regret left behind. A heavy, haunting wave of sorrow and remorse refused to fade. And tonight she finally had a complete, vivid dream. In the dream, Lu Ningxuang found herself standing in a morgue. A staff member pulled back the white sheet, revealing my face. My skin was pale and icy, and my eyes were shut tight. He froze, completely stunned. His hands were shaking so hard he couldn't even lift them. The scene shifts. Now we're in the Lu family living room. His mother is sitting on the sofa. Her eyes are red and swollen as she mumbles to herself, "It's really not Yan Chuan's fault. He just wanted to be with the one he loved." What was wrong with that? I was the one who supported him. I was the one who encouraged him to go after you. But when things went wrong, I pinned all the blame on him. He was always so sweet. He was such a good son. When I was sick, he stayed by my side all night long. That pastry shop I love, he'd go there every single week just to get me some. And on my birthday, he'd always make a gift for me with his own 2 hands. His mother buries her face in her hands and breaks down in tears. But now that he's dead, it finally hits me. I hated him for so long. But all that hate, it was really just hate for myself. The scene shifts again. He's sitting all alone in the study. His mind is flooded with memories from the past. I was 3 years old, huddled in a corner of the orphanage. She looks at me so gently. She reaches out and hands me a piece of candy. My eyes light up and I whisper, "Thank you, big sister." I was 8, running a high fever. She stayed up watching over me the entire night. In my delirium, I grabbed her hand and begged, "Sister, please don't leave." She told me she wouldn't. Big sister is always here. When I was 12, some thugs cornered me in an alley. She rushed in and drove them all away. I clung to her, crying in frustration and fear. She patted my back and said, "Don't be afraid. Big sister will protect you." When I was 16, I wore a suit for the very first time. Walking down those stairs, I looked so handsome he couldn't take his eyes off me. His heart skipped a beat hard. He told himself, "This is my little brother. He's just my little brother." Later on the way I looked at him, the look in my eyes grew more and more intense. Of course, he knew exactly what that look meant, and he tried everything in his power to stop it. Looking back at me with those same eyes, he started seeking out other men, one after another, all while indulging me like a little beast guarding its food, letting me chase every single one of them away. In the end, he just went ahead and got together with Lu Weidong, a man who couldn't stand me. The perfect choice to make me finally give up hope. But every time I made a scene, every time I cried, every time I ran back to cling to him, he was actually happy about it. The day he finally relented and agreed to marry me, on the surface he acted like I'd just worn him down, but only Lu Ningshuang knew the truth. Deep down he wanted to just let things be, even if it was wrong. But then everything started falling apart. My father died, and my mother grew to hate me. He couldn't bear to see me so broken and guilt-ridden, so he hid himself away in company business and social events, burying himself in the comforts of Lu Weidong. But in that empty, hollow villa, where he kept avoiding me, I withered away more each day, and so he asked for a divorce. He thought after the divorce we could go back to being like siblings, so he could treat me well without any reservations, just like he used to protect me when we were kids. But before he could ever make it up to me, I was already dead. The scene shifts. He's standing at the door of Lu Weidong's apartment. The door is cracked open, and suggestive sounds drift from inside. He pushes the door open and sees him in bed with another woman. Lu Weidong rushes over in a panic, trying to explain. He coldly brushes his hand away and walks out. To think he'd thrown his own little brother away. For a man like that? The final image 1 year later, on the anniversary of my death, he stands at that same intersection where I lost my life, holding a bouquet of white roses, watching the endless stream of cars passing by, watching the endless stream of traffic passing by. He suddenly remembered when I was a little girl holding his hand and saying, "Big sister, you have to stay with me forever." He had promised, but he failed to keep it. A truck came barreling toward him. He didn't even try to dodge. Lu Ningshuang jolted awake. The sensation of that truck slamming into him still lingered in his body. The pain was so intense he could barely catch his breath, and it made him realize with chilling clarity that it wasn't just some random nightmare. It made him realize with chilling clarity that this wasn't just a simple dream. It felt more like a past life that had truly happened. He grabbed his phone and dialed my number immediately. It was off. He tried again, still off. He called the manager of the branch office. "Has Yanchuan been settling in well at the office lately? And do you have his current address?" The manager's voice was thick with sleep. "Mr. Lu, young Master Yanchuan never showed up to report for duty. I just assumed he wanted a few extra days to rest." Lu Ningshuang's heart skipped a beat. "Say that again." "He never came to the branch office." Lu Ningshuang hung up the phone hard. He booked the next flight back to the country. Once he got home, he went straight to his mother. "Do you know where Yanchuan went?" Mother Lu frowned. Her tone remained calm as she countered. "Yanchuan, wasn't he the one you arranged to send to the Lin Corporation to take over the branch office?" Lu Ningshuang pressed her. "The branch office said he never even showed up, Mom." "Where the hell did Yanchuan go?" "Don't tell me you don't know. Don't try to play games with me." Mother Lu paused for a second. A hint of irritation crept into her tone. "You got engaged to another man, and you bullied him just to please an outsider. Yanchuan is just in a bad mood. So he went abroad to travel and clear his head. Why are you even bothering about him?" Lu Ningshuang could tell he was trying to dodge the question. She took a deep breath. "Fine. If you won't tell me, I'll find out for myself. I won't bother you anymore." But Lu Ningshuang hadn't expected that. Even after he turned all of Zhangcheng upside down, he wouldn't be able to find a single trace of me. It was as if I had completely vanished into thin air. There were no records of me. Leaving the country, no bank transactions, nothing. Not a single soul had seen me. That was until he happened to pass by the office pantry one day and overheard a few female employees gossiping. "Did you see that report from the Hong Kong media? The Li family's second daughter just got married. Li Anan, that psycho. What kind of guy would actually dare to marry her? They say he's from the mainland. The photo shows a side profile. He's actually quite handsome. Some people dug into it and said he looks just like that one guy from the Lu family. The photo shows a side profile. He's actually quite handsome. Some people dug into it and said he looks just like that one guy from the Lu family. The youngest son." Lu Ningshuang's footsteps froze. He walked over, his voice tight. "What photo?" The employee was startled, scrambling to hand him her phone. The photo was blurry, clearly taken by a paparazzi. It was a wedding scene. The groom stood in a suit seen from the side, revealing only half of his face. But Lu Ningshuang recognized him instantly. That was him. His hands started to tremble as he held the phone. The Li family's wedding in Hong Kong. The date was exactly the same day he was supposed to get engaged to Lu Weidong. He rushed home and confronted Mother Lu, shoving the phone at her. "This is Yanchuan, right?" Mother Lu took one look at it, stayed silent for a long time, and finally nodded. Yanchuan said, "He wanted to repay the Lu family for raising him through this marriage." Her voice was low. He begged me to keep it from you, fearing it would mess up your relationship with Lu Weidong. A loud boom echoed in Lu Ningxuang's mind. Repay the debt of raising him, because he was afraid of ruining his own engagement. So Lu Yanchuan just went and married someone, a total maniac if the rumors are to be believed. He basically threw his entire life away. He turned on his heel and started walking out. Mother Lu grabbed him, asking, "Where do you think you're going?" "Hong Kong. I'm going to bring Yanchuan back." Just then, the front door of the villa was pushed open from the outside. Lu Weidong stood in the doorway, his eyes rimmed with red. Behind him were two servants carrying luggage. "Ningxuang, I was so worried about you I caught the next flight back." He stepped forward, reaching out to grab her hand. "I heard about what happened with Yanchuan. He chose to marry Lianan. That was his own decision." Lu Ningxuang shifted her body, dodging his hand. Lu Weidong froze for a second. He forced a smile. "Are you just exhausted? Don't be like this. Let's just go home and get some rest. We can worry about Yanchuan later." Lu Ningxuang looked straight at him. Her eyes were cold as ice. "He is my brother." Lu Weidong's tone became frantic. "I know he's your brother, but do you have any idea what kind of family the Li family is?" "He is my brother." Lu Weidong's tone became frantic. "I know he's your brother, but do you have any idea what kind of family the Li family is? If you rush over there to snatch him back and word gets out, where will the Lu family's reputation be? And what about our engagement?" He paused for a moment. His voice took on a hint of grievance. "Besides, since Yanchuan chose to get married, it shows he had already made up his mind. You know he's always been fond of you. Now that he's finally willing to let go and start a new life, as his older sister, shouldn't you be happy for him? Why do you have to insist on interfering?" Lu Ningxuang stared at him and suddenly let out a cold laugh. "Lu Weidong, how many girlfriends did you have during those years you were abroad?" Lu Weidong's face shifted. Lu Ningxuang. Her tone was flat. "Do you need me to list them out for you one by one? Or perhaps you'd rather I tell you all their names?" Lu Weidong stepped back, flustered. His lips trembled, but he couldn't make a sound. No words would come out. Lu Ningxuang walked right past him. "The engagement is off. Don't ever show your face in front of me again." Lu Weidong spun around abruptly. His voice turned shrill. "Lu Ningxuang, you're treating me like this just for the sake of Lu Yanchuan. He's your brother. You two are siblings. Get a grip, will you?" Ningxuang paused in her tracks. She looked back at him. The coldness in her gaze sent a shiver straight down his spine. "Whether I'm clear-headed or not isn't for you to decide." On the other side, sunlight streamed in through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I was lying in bed, staring at the intricate relief patterns on the ceiling, lost in thought for a long time. That was when it finally hit me. This is the Li family's ancestral manor in France. The wedding from 3 days ago still felt like a dream. After arriving in Hong Kong, I was picked up by people from the Li family and taken to a mountaintop villa. At the wedding, I was wearing a white suit, walking down the red carpet. Standing at the end of the aisle was a young woman, her features as exquisite as if she had stepped out of a painting. That was Lianan, the legendary madwoman known for her brutal nature, yet possessing a face so pure and ethereal. She was wearing a black wedding dress with a long train. There was something about her eyes that made her feel strangely familiar, but I didn't have time to process it. I didn't have time to think it through. Before I knew it, she was already standing right in front of me. The wedding was grand and magnificent. Every detail was luxurious and refined to the extreme, yet there were very few guests in attendance. Throughout the ceremony, Lianan remained perfectly graceful. Only, she kept an almost imperceptible distance from me the whole time. We exchanged rings. We took our vows before the priest, just like any other newlywed couple. That night, Lianan brought over our marriage certificate. And there's a late-night snack, too, plus a change of clothes and some skincare products. He stood there in the doorway. In a flat tone, he said, "Mr. Lu, get some rest early. I'm staying in the room next door. If you need anything, just call the staff." The door clicked shut, and I looked at the pile of things on the table. I suddenly let out a sigh of relief. I lay in bed staring up at the ceiling. I couldn't help but think that this arranged marriage was turning out way better than I'd expected. The next day, Lianan flew me out to France. It was a 12-hour flight. We were sitting on the same private jet, but we barely said a word to each other. Lianan spent the whole time looking over documents, and occasionally taking calls. He was speaking French the entire time. I couldn't understand a single word. I just leaned against the window, zoning out as I watched the clouds drift by. When the plane finally landed, I saw an ancient castle standing deep within an estate. It was surrounded by vast stretches of vineyards. Lianan said, "This is where you'll be living from now on." I just nodded. I followed him as we got out of the car. The castle was massive, and the place was crawling with staff. Yet Lianan was hardly ever around. He handed me over to the butler, told him to take good care of the gentleman, and just left. Over the next few days, I started to notice something. Everything about this place felt just a little bit off. The walk-in closet was filled with all the latest season styles, and they were all my favorite brands. There was an entire wall of books in the study, Every single one was related to film studies. A lot of them were rare out-of-print editions I'd been dying to get my hands on. Even the desserts served with afternoon tea were from that old local bakery I've loved since I was a kid. I asked the butler who arranged all of this. The butler just smiled and said, "It was ordered by the miss." "Who prepared this?" The butler smiled again. The miss gave specific instructions. She said everything must be tailored to the gentleman's preferences. I stood there completely stunned. How could he possibly know what I like? The butler didn't answer. He just bowed and excused himself. I stood by the window, looking out at this unfamiliar estate. Sunlight danced on the grapevines, and a few birds soared across the sky. I suddenly thought back to the day I left Jiangcheng. My assistant asked if I didn't need to pack any luggage. I brushed it off, saying it wasn't necessary. I could just buy whatever I needed when I got there. And now I truly don't need to buy a single thing. I don't have to worry about a thing either, because someone has already arranged everything for me. That someone is Lianan, my current spouse. Even though he keeps his distance from me, he still handles every little detail with such perfection. I have no idea why he's doing all of this. I only feel that Lianan is shrouded in a cloud of intriguing mysteries. Perhaps this arranged marriage isn't as terrifying as I had imagined. A month has passed, and I've gradually gotten used to this life away from home. The days are peaceful and comfortable, finally soothing the constant gnawing anxiety I've felt since my rebirth. Lianan is still like a phantom, always elusive. Sometimes he disappears for days on end, and even when we occasionally cross paths in the dining room, he just gives a slight nod. We never exchange more than 3 sentences. I don't ask, and he offers no explanation. The two of us are like total strangers living under the same roof. That was until that one late night. I was startled awake by a commotion downstairs. I threw on a robe and opened my bedroom door. From down the hall, I could hear the muffled, shocked gasps of the servants. My heart skipped a beat. I hurried downstairs. The living room was ablaze with light. 2 bodyguards were supporting Lianan as they walked in. He was covered in blood, his white shirt stained a deep, shocking crimson. The bodyguards gently laid Lianan down onto the sofa. He looked up and froze for a moment when he saw me. I took a deep breath and walked over to him. Only when I got closer did I realize he had wounds all over his body. The longest one was on his arm. The skin was torn open and mangled. Blood was still oozing out of it. The longest wound was on his arm. The skin was torn open and mangled. Blood was still oozing out of it. His face was pale, almost transparent. I turned to the servant nearby and ordered them to get the medical kit. "Hot water and a towel now." The servants snapped out of their trance. They hurried off. I crouched down and reached out to check Lianan's forehead. It was ice cold and covered in a cold sweat. Lianan seemed to sense something. His eyelashes trembled slightly. He struggled to open his eyes. When he saw me, his gaze turned hazy for a second. His lips moved, but he couldn't make a sound. I held down his hand as he tried to lift it. "Don't talk. I'm going to dress your wounds." The medical kit arrived. I took out the alcohol gauze and styptic powder, laying them all out one by one. The bodyguard tried to take over. "Sir, let me do it." "No need." I ripped open the seal on the alcohol bottle. I soaked a cotton ball and began to clean the wound on Lianan's arm. My hands were shaking a little, but I didn't stop. When the cotton ball touched the edge of the wound, Lianan's whole body jolted. I looked up at him. He was gritting his teeth, his forehead slick with cold sweat, yet he didn't make a single sound. I frowned and said, "If it hurts, just yell." Lianan looked at me and managed a faint, weak smile, but stayed silent, so I lowered my head and kept cleaning. Disinfecting, applying medicine, and bandaging my movements were swift, but I did every step with the utmost care. After dealing with the wound on his arm, I realized he had other injuries as well. His ribs were bruised and purple. There were also several bloody welts on his back. I asked him to turn to the side. I began to clean those tiny wounds bit by bit. Lianan didn't make a single sound the entire time, but every time I touched a painful spot, his body would tense up slightly. I don't know how much time passed. By the time I finished treating the last wound, I put down the tweezers and realized my palms were soaked in sweat. I stood up intending to go wash my hands, but my wrist was suddenly grabbed. I don't know when Lianan had opened his eyes again. His consciousness seemed to be fading. His eyes were unfocused, yet he gripped my hand with a death-like hold. Lianan. I don't know when he opened his eyes again. His consciousness seemed to be fading. His eyes were unfocused, yet he held on to me, clutching my hand tight and refusing to let go. "Don't go," he mumbled, his voice hoarse. He sounded as fragile as a child. I froze, looking down at him. His face was deathly pale. His brows were furrowed tightly, and his lips were pressed into a thin, straight line. The hand holding mine was trembling slightly, like a drowning person clinging to a piece of driftwood. A part of my heart suddenly softened. I sat back down by the edge of the sofa. I didn't pull my hand away. "I'm not going anywhere, just go to sleep." Lianan seemed to understand. His grip on my hand loosened a little, but he still didn't let go. He closed his eyes, and his breathing gradually grew steady. I leaned back against the sofa armrest, watching him sleep so peacefully. That face is honestly stunning. When he's asleep, he doesn't have an ounce of hostility in him. He even looks kind of sweet. I can't stop thinking about those 2 words he said earlier, "Don't go." It's just like all those years ago when I had a high fever, and I held on to Lu Ningshuang's hand begging big sister, please don't go. I lowered my eyes, deciding not to dwell on it anymore. I just sat there like that. I let her hold my hand all through the night. The sky outside started to turn pale as dawn broke. I finally drifted off into a hazy sleep. When I woke up again, I realized I was lying in bed. Lianan was sitting by the bedside. She had already changed into clean clothes. Her complexion was still pale, but she looked so much more energetic now. She was staring at me without even blinking. Her gaze felt intense, almost burning. Seeing me open my eyes, she smiled and said, "Thanks for last night, Yanchuan." My ears burned with sudden heat. I shook my head and replied, "It was the least I could do." Lianan let out a soft, hummed laugh. She stood up and walked to the doorway. Then she turned back and said, "From now on, I'll be back every day for dinner." After the door closed, I stood there stunned for quite a while. Ever since that night, Lianan really did come back every single night to have dinner with me. She would show up in the dining room right on time. After dinner, we'd walk through the garden together. And when the night grew late, we'd sleep in the same bed. She never crossed the line. In fact, she would ask every single time, "Is it okay?" I mean, really asking if it was okay. Only after I said yes would she lie down. Life began to flow by day after day, in this tender, quiet companionship. I gradually grew used to having someone by my side. I got used to seeing Lianan sitting across from me at breakfast. I got used to hearing her say goodnight before I drifted off. One night under the beautiful moonlight, Lianan and I had a little to drink. We ended up talking about all those rumors surrounding her. I was a bit nervous at first, but Lianan was unexpectedly honest, her voice calm and chilling. I inherited my mother's mental illness. I cursed my two older sisters to their deaths. She listed them off one by one. Her tone was as flat as if she were talking about someone else entirely. That's how the outside world describes me, right? I stayed silent. Lianan continued without stopping. When I was 10, I watched my mother die with my own eyes. The murderer was a servant who had worked for our family for 15 years. My mother had always trusted him completely, but he took advantage of her afternoon nap to kill her in cold blood. I've always suspected he was bought off by someone else, someone who wanted to get to my father, and decided to use my mother as a warning. Later on, my two older sisters died too. My eldest sister in a car accident. My second sister a falling accident while riding. They called them all accidents, but they were all murders. Lianan closed his eyes. Once my father was out of the picture, I was next. They claimed I had inherited my mother's mental illness. They threw me into a sanitarium. It wasn't until my father passed away that I was forced to take over the family business. I used ruthless, iron-fisted tactics to purge my enemies. And finally, I secured my position as the head of the family. So most of those rumors you've heard, they're actually true. Lianan opened his eyes. He turned his head to look at me. A smile tugged at the corner of his lips. I have indeed killed people. And yes, I have truly been insane. I looked straight into his eyes. Those eyes were pitch black and incredibly deep, like a bottomless lake impossible to see through. After a long silence, I finally asked, "Then why have you been so good to me?" The look in Lianan's eyes shifted. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned his body to face me fully. The distance between us narrowed until it was almost non-existent. Because you saved me. I was stunned. What? When I was 15, he began, I escaped from that sanitarium. I was being hunted down. I ran all the way to Zheng City and ended up hiding in a back alley. Ducking into a side alley? He stared straight into my eyes. There was a pile of junk at the mouth of the alley. I hid inside it. Soon after, a few men in black came chasing after me. They were searching house by house, and just then, a little boy ran over. He stood right in front of the pile of junk and told those men in black that he saw someone running off in the other direction. Lianan, wearing black, curled the corner of his lips into a smile. The men in black asked him if he had seen me. He said he hadn't, and told those guys to hurry up and leave. Don't get in the way of him buying his candied hawthorn. His bodyguards were right there outside. My eyes widened in shock. The men finally left. He pulled me out from behind the pile of junk and shoved a bottle of water into my hands. Lianan looked at me. He said, "You're bleeding. Clean yourself up." I asked him for his name, so I could repay him later. He said no need, and then he just ran off. It all came back to me. That year I had snuck out to buy snacks. I ran into a girl covered in blood in that alley and helped her trick the people chasing her. I even handed her a bottle of water. I never saw her again after that. I blurted out, "It was you." Lianan nodded with a smile. "All these years, I've been watching over you from the shadows. I found out you were adopted by the Liu family, but they treated you well, and all you had eyes for was that sister of yours. It wasn't until I heard your sister was getting engaged," Lianan's voice softened, "that I offered the Liu family a marriage alliance." He suddenly grabbed my hand, intense and urgent. "Since you've agreed to marry me, don't even think about leaving me for the rest of your life." He stared into my eyes, enunciating every single word. "Even if it kills me, I am never letting you go." I locked eyes with him. His eyes were deep and pitch black. In them, I saw a sincerity I could clearly understand. But there was also something there I couldn't quite grasp. Yet the feeling swelling up inside me wasn't fear. Yes, there was a sincerity, but also something I couldn't understand. But the feeling rising within me wasn't fear. It was a sense of safety I had never felt before. I squeezed his hand back, not saying a word. Lianon was stunned for a moment. Then his eyes curved into a smile. That night, the distance between us shrank from half a body length to zero. News of Lu Weidong's engagement being called off spread through our circle like wildfire. The Lu family felt disgraced. They locked him at home and forbade him from going out. He smashed everything in his room that could be broken. He blamed it all on Lu Yanchuan. That man was already married, yet he still wanted to destroy him. Lu Weidong used the connections he had built up before to contact an old rival who was living in Europe. He leaked my whereabouts, my daily habits, my routine for going out, and every shop I liked to visit. He revealed it all. He even hired someone to forge evidence that I had an illicit affair with Lu Ningshuang before my marriage. He sent it anonymously to Lianon. When this gift arrived, I was keeping Lianon company in the study while he looked over some documents. Lianon opened the email and took one look. His expression shifted slightly. I noticed his gaze land on me. "What's wrong?" I asked, though Lianon didn't say a word. He turned the laptop screen toward me. Once I saw the content on the screen, my blood instantly ran cold. It was a collection of photos of me and Lu Ningshuang. Some were real, but some were clearly photoshopped. The caption attached was absolutely repulsive. It claimed that I had been involved with Lu Ningshuang long before I got married, accusing me of seducing my own sister and having no morals. I opened my mouth to explain, but I found my throat tightening. Lianon looked at me and suddenly gave a small smile. With a few taps of his fingers, he permanently deleted that email. "I've known about you and your sister for a long time, but that's the past. You are my husband now. I trust you." I was stunned. Lianon looked at me. His gaze was calm but incredibly sincere. "Forget the past. I've been investigating you for 8 years. I know who you are better than you do yourself." My eyes grew hot with unshed tears. I put down my book and walked over to him. For the first time, I took the initiative to hug him. "I know who you are better than you do yourself." My eyes grew hot with unshed tears. I put down my book and walked over to him. For the first time, I took the initiative to hug him. Lianon's body stiffened for a split second. Then he reached out and wrapped his arms around my waist. He didn't say a word, just tightened his grip. Outside the window, the sunlight was perfect. We just held each other like that. A few days later, I went out to a shop in the city. It's a bookstore I visit once every week to pick up some new releases and just walk around town a bit. The driver and bodyguards Lianon assigned to me were following along. I didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. Halfway there, our car was suddenly forced to a stop by several black vehicles. The bodyguards reacted quickly. They tried to shield me and turn the car around, but there were too many of them. There were over a dozen men surrounding us with clubs in their hands. My palms were sweating, but I forced myself to stay calm. Just as those men were about to smash the car windows, another group of people suddenly swarmed out. They were Lianon's men. They flanked them from behind. Their movements were precise and ruthless. Within a few minutes, they had all 10 or more thugs pinned to the ground. I stared at the scene unfolding before me. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was going to burst out of my chest. The car door was yanked open. Lianon was standing there. His face was terrifyingly dark and stormy. He reached in and pulled me out, asking, "Are you hurt? Did you get hurt?" I shook my head, and only then did Lianon let out a sigh of relief. On the drive back, he was on his phone the entire time. From the snippets I could overhear, he was interrogating those thugs, asking who sent them, what they were trying to do, and who was pulling the strings behind the scenes. By the time we got home, it was already dark. Lianon walked me to my room and said, "Get some rest early. I have some things to take care of." I grabbed his sleeve. "Who was it?" Lianon was silent for 2 seconds before saying, "Lu Weidong. He got in touch with my family's rivals, hoping to use you to threaten me." My heart sank. Lianon wrapped his arms around my waist, rested his head against my chest, and whispered, "Don't worry." He laid a hand on my person. "I will make him pay the price." He turned and started walking out, but stopped at the door and looked back. "From now on, take more people with you when you go out." This time it was my negligence. My negligence! The door clicked shut. I sat on the edge of the bed, replaying the image of those thugs rushing at me. My fingers were still trembling slightly, but deep down I felt something else. A sense of peace. I knew that someone was there to protect me. He wouldn't let anything happen to me. Lu Ningshuang had wanted to come and get me immediately, but was held back by domestic business matters for a full 2 weeks. Lu Fu had taken charge of the company personally, slamming a stack of documents down in front of him. "You want to run off to Hong Kong to snatch someone back? Finish dealing with these first. The Lu family's business isn't a playground for your whims." Du Ningshuang pulled over a dozen all-nighters and finally got every last one of the backlog projects cleared. As the plane took off, he leaned against the window, his eyes bloodshot and weary. 14 hours of flight time. Yet he couldn't close his eyes for even a single minute. My image filled his every thought. The way I used to cling to his hand and act spoiled as a child. Sister Shihan, The way I wished him a happy engagement right before I left, and the images from his dreams, my deathly pale face, my cold, lifeless body, and that intersection, he couldn't afford to lose me again. The plane touched down. Lu Ningshuang immediately hired a car to head straight to the Li family's manor. The great gates of the manor were tightly shut. Two bulky bodyguards stood at the entrance with blank, stony expressions. "I'm looking for Li Anan." The bodyguard glanced at him dismissively. "The young miss is not seeing anyone." "I'm looking for Lu Yanchuan. He is my brother." The bodyguard remained completely expressionless. "The master is not seeing anyone." Lu Ningshuang clenched his fists tightly. He stood at the gates for a very long time, but he didn't give up. He found a spot outside the manor gates, sat down and started his wait. The first day, no one paid him any mind. Bodyguards changed shifts twice, looking at him as if he were some kind of lunatic. By the second day, it started to rain. He had no umbrella, just standing there in the downpour. A bodyguard came over to check, then retreated back inside. By the third day, the rain had stopped. He leaned against the wall. His lips were dry and cracked, but his eyes remained fixed on that door. His eyes never once left that door. On the fourth morning, the door finally opened. I stepped out from inside, looking vibrant and well. There was even a healthy rosy glow on my cheeks. The sunlight fell upon me, making me look like a painting. Lu Ningshuang froze in his tracks. I looked pretty good, much better than he ever imagined. I walked right up to him and stopped. Looking at his pathetic, disheveled state, I felt a hint of surprise. But more than that, I just didn't get it. "Sis, why are you here?" Lu Ningshuang's throat tightened. Her voice sounded raspy, almost like it wasn't her own. "Lianen is no good. He's not a good person. I'm here to take you home." I didn't say a word. He stepped forward trying to grab my hand, but the bodyguards on the side blocked him. "I know I was wrong." Lu Ningshuang just kept staring straight into my eyes. "I shouldn't have doubted you. I shouldn't have hit you. I shouldn't have locked you away. And I shouldn't have divorced you." I paused for a moment, and then I smiled. It was a faint smile, with a touch of something indescribable behind it. "So my dear sister has been reborn too." Lu Ningshuang felt her heart clench violently. I looked at her, my eyes as calm as ever. "But it's too late." I took a step back, putting some distance between us. "I am Lianan's husband now. He and I, we have a promise. In this life, we will never be apart." Lu Ningshuang tried to say something, but she felt as if her throat was being choked shut. I turned around and started walking back. Instinctively, he tried to chase after me, but the bodyguards blocked his path. "Sis!" he shouted, his voice cracking and raw. I faltered for a second, but I didn't look back. "Just go home." My voice drifted back to him. Everything between us ended a long time ago. I walked through those heavy doors and vanished from his sight. Lu Ningshuang stood there in the same spot, watching as the door slowly closed. The sun is shining bright. A gentle breeze is blowing. Suddenly he crouches down, burying his face in his palms. Lu Ningshuang didn't leave. He found a hotel to stay at, in a town near the ancient castle. Every single morning, he goes to the gates of the castle. He settled into a hotel in the nearby town. Every single morning, he waits right at the entrance of the castle, and every single evening, he has a letter delivered inside. The first letter was all about the regret from his past life. It described how he completely fell apart after I died. It talked about how standing at that intersection, his mind was filled with nothing but me. The second letter, he poured out his cowardice in this life. He wrote about how he'd fallen for me long ago, but was too afraid to admit it. He described the agonizing pain he felt when he pushed me towards someone else. The third letter was all about my best qualities. He wrote about me at 3 years old, shyly calling him Big Sister. He wrote about me at 16 walking down the stairs, and how he couldn't take his eyes off me. The fourth letter, the fifth letter, and the sixth, I didn't reply to a single one. The bodyguards at the gate went from being on high alert to ignoring him entirely, and finally just feeling helpless. They watched this disheveled, pathetic man show up right on time every day. Every letter felt like he was performing some kind of ritual. Half a month later, I finally agreed to see him. We met in the castle garden. There was a white wrought iron table and chairs, a pot of black tea, and 2 plates of snacks. Sunlight filtered through the grapevines, casting broken shards of gold across the ground. I sat across from him, wearing a simple beige shirt. My complexion was even better than the last time we met. In my eyes and brows, there was a sense of ease and liveliness that he hadn't seen in a very long time. I spoke, my tone indifferent. "What exactly are you trying to say, sister? Let's just talk face to face today." Lu Ningshuang felt her throat tighten. 1,000 words were stuck in her chest. In the end, they all turned into a single sentence. "Yanchuan, come back home with me." I looked at him and suddenly smiled. That smile was different from the last time. Last time it was full of distance. This time it was indifference. "Sister, do you still not get it even now?" I picked up my teacup and took a sip. "I'm not doing this out of spite. I'm not throwing a temper tantrum either. I truly, genuinely don't want to go back." Lu Ningshuang opened her mouth. "But you said you loved me." I set my teacup down. Staring straight into her eyes, I said, "Then let me ask you a few things." Lu Ningshuang nodded. I said, enunciating every single word, "In our past life." I didn't care about the teacup anymore, I just locked eyes with her. "Then let me ask you a few things." Lu Ningshuang nodded. I said, enunciating every single word in our past life. And in this one as well. Why did you push me toward Lu Xinyue? Lu Ningshuang felt her heart skip a beat. Do you even know what kind of person he really is? Just because Yu Weidong said he was good, you didn't even bother to check. You just pushed me right into his hands. Back when I was in school, when the class monitor or the school beauty chased after me, you always claimed they weren't good enough for me. You wouldn't even let them get within a step of me. Lu Ningshuang wanted to defend herself, but she realized she didn't even know where to begin. I continued, second question. When Lu Xinyue drugged me, and I escaped and came home to explain, did you believe me? Lu Ningshuang's throat felt as if it were blocked. I answered for her, you didn't. You didn't even bother to investigate. You just immediately decided that I was the one causing trouble. That I was the one stirring up drama. I wasn't afraid to go to the police, but in order to keep things quiet and smooth things over with the Lu family, you chose to punish me instead, while dealing with the Bei Lu family's punishment. I paused for a moment. Third thing, you hit me 10 times. You locked me in the storage room for 3 days. No doctor, no medicine. Just moldy steamed buns and cold water. Lu Ningshuang's face turned deathly pale in an instant. My voice remained calm. Do you know how I spent those 3 days? My knife wounds hadn't healed. The infection was spreading and the drugs hadn't worn off. I was burning with fever and losing my mind. I pounded on the door until my palms were bleeding, begging them to give me a sip of water, to give me just a little medicine. They said it was your wish, that this time you wanted to make sure I suffered enough to learn my lesson. Lu Ningshuang was trembling all over. He didn't know. He really didn't know. Fourth thing. I looked at him. My gaze was like looking at a complete stranger. What were you doing during those 3 days you had me locked away? Lu Ningshuang's mind flashed back to those memories. He had been helping Lu Weidong pick out outfits, overseeing the details of their engagement banquet, listening to him complain that the roses weren't fresh enough. You were busy preparing for your engagement party. I said it for him. Grand and magnificent, impeccably detailed. Personally supervising every little thing, reviewing the invitations one by one, customizing the gemstones for the rings, filling the banquet hall with roses. I let out a soft, bitter laugh. That wedding I fought tooth and nail for in my past life, you were just brushing me off from start to finish. I didn't understand it back then, but now I do. It's not that you weren't capable of caring, you just didn't want to care about me. Lu Ningshuang's eyes turned red. His voice was hoarse. Yan Chuan, I was wrong. I was stupid, I was a coward. Whatever you want me to do to make it up to you, I'll do it. I just beg you to give me one more chance. I remained silent for a long, long time. I picked up my teacup, then set it back down. I'll never forget the kindness you showed me. That's why I can only see you as a sister now. I don't dare to love you anymore. And I don't want to love you anymore either. Lu Ningshuang felt as if a knife were twisting in her heart. I stood up then. Just like you always wanted, sister. We will always be siblings. You should go back. After saying that, I turned and walked away. Lu Ningshuang tried to follow, but her legs felt like they were nailed to the ground. She watched my back as I walked further and further away until I disappeared at the end of the garden. Lu Ningshuang didn't leave. She just stayed behind in France. She rented an apartment in town and settled in. Every day she handled her company's business back home. She would go out occasionally, or stand by the window for a long, long time. No one knew what was going through her mind. She started doing a few things behind the scenes, secretly investigating everything Lu Weidong had done over the years. Looking for people, looking for evidence, searching for the truths that had been buried. A month later, she mailed a large craft paper envelope to the manor, addressed to Lianan. Inside was all the proof of Lu Weidong's crimes, how he bribed Lu Xingyue to drug me, how while I was locked in solitary confinement, he ordered the servants to deny me food, water, and medicine, and how he contacted my family's rivals to leak my whereabouts. 3 days later, Lianan sent someone to find her. They met at a local cafe in town. Lianan sat by the window, wearing a black overcoat. Her face looked even paler than the rumors suggested. Lu Ningshuang sat down across from her. They locked eyes for a few seconds. Lianan spoke up, her voice flat and indifferent. I received the package. What is it that you want? What is it that you want? Lu Ningshuang shook her head. I don't want anything. Yan Chuan is my younger brother. If anyone messes with him, I won't let it slide. But he's dead set on you now. I need to see how you truly feel about him. Lianan stared at him for a long time. Finally, she nodded. I'll handle Lu Weidong's situation. After saying that, he stood up and left. He reached the door, then turned back. His smile was a bit wicked. Sister hasn't thanked you yet for giving me this chance. Next time I'll treat you to that wedding wine you missed out on. The door clicked shut. Lu Ningshuang sat there alone, her face dark. Her coffee had gone cold, but she didn't even touch it. Lu Weidong's downfall came fast. First, the Lu family was put under investigation. Tax evasion, corporate fraud, one charge after another hit them like a wrecking ball. Lu Fu was dragged off for questioning. The Lu family's assets were frozen, and the company went bankrupt. Then came the trouble for Lu Weidong himself. All the evil things he'd done over the years were exposed one by one. The internet was filled with outrage bullying classmates framing me. Hiring thugs, kidnapping any one of those was enough to ruin him for good. On the day he was kicked out of the family, he didn't even have time to pack his bags. With nowhere left to turn, he bought a plane ticket hoping to hide out overseas and let the storm blow over. But the police stopped him at the airport. "Mr. Lu Weidong, you are suspected of conspiracy and kidnapping. Please come with us." He struggled, screaming that he was innocent, but nobody paid him any mind. I didn't go to the trial, but I heard what happened afterward. Li Anan went to the detention center in person to visit Lu Weidong one last time. Nobody knows what they talked about. All I know is that after Li Anan left, Lu Weidong was sent to a psychiatric ward. He had lost his mind in there. He spent his days rambling nonsense. Sometimes she'd scream, wishing Lu Yanchuan a miserable death. Other times, she'd be sobbing and begging for mercy. When the news finally reached Lu Ningxuan's ears that the person who wished him a miserable death was now begging for mercy, sobbing, he was in his apartment buried in paperwork. He set his pen down and walked over to the window. It was snowing outside, the very first snowfall of the year. When evening fell, Lu Ningxuan headed to the old manor. He waited by the entrance for a while. The door opened and I stepped out. I was wearing a white down jacket, my scarf pulled all the way up to my chin. When I saw him, I paused, taken aback. Lu Ningxuan pulled an envelope from his coat pocket. He handed it to me. "What's this?" I asked. He smiled and said, "Half of the Lu family's assets. I've transferred everything into your name. The paperwork is all taken care of. You just need to sign the documents." I opened the envelope, took a quick look, and asked, "What are you doing?" Lu Ningxuan looked at me deeply. "This is what you deserve. The Lu family raised you for 20 years. You've more than paid them back. From now on, the Lu family will always be your backer. If you want to go back, you go back. If you don't want to, then don't." I was silent for a long moment. Then I tucked the envelope away. I looked at him. And the look in my eyes was different than before. There was no hate, no resentment. Just a faint, gentle warmth. "Thank you, sister." Lu Ningxuan felt a lump form in his throat. He wanted to say something but found he couldn't get the words out. The snow was falling harder now, settling on both our shoulders. The door behind me opened again. Lianan walked out holding an umbrella. He came to my side and held the umbrella over my head. He glanced at Lu Ningxuan, said nothing, and simply reached out to wrap his arm around mine. He didn't say a word, just reached out and wrapped his arms around mine. I turned my head to look at him. He stood on his tiptoes and brushed a light kiss against my cheek. It was so gentle, so natural, as if he'd done it 1,000 times before. Lu Ningxuan just stood there watching us. Snow was settling on his hair and his shoulders, but he didn't move. Lianan put her arm around me and we turned to head back. As I reached the door, I glanced back at him one last time. There was so much in that look. Relief, gratitude, and a final goodbye. Then I stepped inside. The door closed. Lu Ningxuan stood alone in the snow. There was relief, gratitude, and a final goodbye. Then I stepped inside and the door closed. Lu Ningxuan stood there in the snow for a long, long time. Snowflakes landed on his face and melted, turning into water that trickled down his cheeks. He finally understood. When you let some people go, they're gone for a lifetime. Days turned into weeks, and I realized that Lianan's presence in my life had become something I couldn't live without. We had fallen into a rhythm, like an old married couple completely in sync. 1 year later, Lianan lay in a hospital bed at the Dangdao private hospital. Her face was a bit pale, but her eyes were bright and full of life. I sat by the bedside, cradling 2 tiny bundles in my arms. I was sitting so stiffly, as if I were holding something incredibly fragile and precious, afraid to even breathe, let alone move. A boy and a girl. Twins. Lianan looked at me and couldn't help but laugh at how dazed I looked. I didn't say a word. I just kept my head down, staring at those 2 little wrinkled faces, my eyes slowly welling up with tears. "Thank you. Thank you for giving me a real home." She took my hand and pressed it against her cheek. "You silly goose." I leaned in and pressed a tender, auspicious kiss to his lips. Our 2 little ones were fast asleep in our arms. The sound of their tiny, rhythmic breathing filled the air. On the day of the full moon, Mom and Dad Lu flew all the way to France to visit us. As Mom held her granddaughter, her eyes welled up with tears time and time again. Dad Lu stood nearby, watching the 2 children, unable to hide the beaming smile on his face. Mom said the baby looked just like Yanchuan did when he was small, especially her eyes. "Her nose looks just like his, too," Lianan added with a laugh. "You're absolutely right, Mom." Mom looked up at her, her eyes filled with warmth and relief. She couldn't help but think that this daughter-in-law was 10,000 times better than the rumors had suggested. I glanced around the room and suddenly asked, "Didn't my sister come?" Mom hesitated for a moment before saying Ning Shuang. She had some business at the company and couldn't get away. I didn't say anything. Mom took a velvet box out of her bag and handed it to me. "She asked me to bring this for you." I opened it to find a pair of longevity locks, crafted from pure gold with exquisite detail. Engraved on the surface of the locks were 2 names, our children's names. Tucked at the bottom of the box was a letter. I pulled out the stationery and unfolded it. There was only one sentence written there: "Yanchuan, I wish you happiness." Your sister will always be your sister. I stared at those words, lost in thought for a long time. The history between Lu Shuang and me, all the love, all the hatred, and all the entanglements, played out in my mind like a movie. I remembered the candy she gave me when I was 3, her hand resting by my bedside when I was sick with a fever, and the gifts she would always bring back whenever she returned from a business trip. And then there were the hurts, the coldness, and those moments that forced her to leave. Shaking myself back to reality, I folded the letter, placed it back in the box, and tucked it away into the drawer. Laughter drifted in from outside the window. I walked over and pushed the window open. The sunlight in the garden was just right. Lianan was sitting on the grass holding our 2 children. The 2 babies were cooing, reaching out their tiny hands to grab at his face. Sunlight spilled over him, landing softly on those 2 little faces. It was so warm and bright. A smile tugged at the corner of my lips as I walked out of the room. I made my way down the hallway and pushed open the garden door. Lianan looked up, her eyes crinkling into a smile the moment she saw me. Naturally, she reached out and I pulled her into my arms. I looked down at our 2 children. The little one saw their daddy and excitedly reached out for me. So I laughed and took one of them into my arms, pressing a kiss to their cheek. Lianan held the other one and leaned in close, kissing me on the cheek as well. The 2 kids started giggling at their mom, dad, and their big brother. I looked at the daughter in my arms, then at the son in Lianan's arms. Finally, I looked up at Lianan. The sunshine was just perfect. A gentle breeze rustled through the grapevine leaves. I suddenly felt that I must have used up all the luck in my life just to reach this moment. There's still a long life ahead of us, but I'm already holding true happiness in my hands. From now on, the days will be peaceful, and we'll have nothing left to fear.